What up, what up, what up? Welcome to another episode of New Orleans Basketball and New Orleans Network podcast. As always, I am your host, Raphael Rattler, joined by my fellow middle brother, Garrick Rattler. What's poppin' with you, bro?
What up, bro? Everything's all good on this side. Trying to get some rest and relaxation with things going as crazy as they are right now. But I'm chilling on this side, enjoying the W, and my Aces are going on a little bit of a slide right now. Got to get some of these injuries under things. This man, I feel like I'm talking about injuries on basketball teams like all the freaking time. But yeah, man, it's all good. They'll shake back. The Team USA women's team came out. The announcement came out, and obviously, Caitlin Clark. So everybody's up in arms about that. But for me, I just think that this is very similar to the men's league, where like there's some players on that women's team that's like this is the last ride. Like this is the last time they could get going. Speak about players like Diana Taurasi. And I think that like they'll have people like Caitlin Clark who will be the linchpin of the Team USA moving forward. So no harm, no foul on that side for me. But I can understand why people are upset about her not being on the team, because she is the mega star right now and everybody's paying attention to her. But I think she'll this is considered as paying her dues, and she'll be part of the future moving forward. But outside of that, obviously the finals are going on. Boston is putting belt to ass on the Dallas Mavericks. I mean, it is. I said it coming into the. I'm like, sometimes we watch NBA seasons and we watch NBA teams, and there are teams that like distance themselves, and you spend the whole season trying to say, well, this is wrong, and this is wrong, this is wrong, and this is wrong about them. But then they go and win like 64 games and like have the biggest plus minus in the NBA. You're like, oh well, they ended up in the finals, and now they're like up 2 games in the finals. Like sometimes, like there's no elaborate story. The team is just really freaking good, and I think the Mavs have run into. I've been saying this all. Anybody who I talk to when they ask me about the finals, I think the Celtics are the best team in the NBA, and this Mavs team that came out of the West, it was a bunch of like, this team is built to beat this team. Like I think I was talking to you about it. Yeah, I was talking to you about it. I think like Minnesota was built to beat Denver, but Denver could beat Dallas, but they didn't have to play them because they ran into Minnesota. And Dallas is kind of with their dribble penetration, and they're able to play one-on-one, kind of built to beat Minnesota, and that's how they ended up in the champion in the finals. I don't know if Dallas was like the best team to come in the West. I think they played the best, and like they got the matchups that favored them, but they running into a team that is like, it doesn't matter who's on the other side of there, we're probably better than them. So I think that's what's going on now, and we'll see if Dallas can go home and make it a chance. So how's everything on your side?
Everything is blessed. 1,000%. It's already 2,000 degrees in the south.
Yes, so it is. Yes, it is.
If you are in the north, enjoy the summertime, because this is where we hide and try to protect ourselves. But no, you're right, man. Watching these finals, I'll be the first to admit, I was one of those people that said Luka's the best player in this series, and Kyrie has the most experience closing. Give me those two if the games are close, and I anticipated them being close. But like you said all season long about the Pelicans, one way to not have to play in clutch situations and have to win close at the end is to blow the hell out of the other team on the other side. And like, the Celtics have been clearly better than the Mavs on multiple fronts. Like, even when they're not playing well, they're better. And like, you could make an argument that Luka's been the best player in this series so far, but it doesn't matter because like Boston
2 through 7, 2 through 7,
so many ways of beating you on a given night that even if it's not Brown, if it's not Tatum, KP can give you 20 because he's been the number 1 option on the team. Drew Holiday can get you 20 because he's been a number 1, number 2 option on the team. So like, you have so many guys that can score and get their own, and we're gonna dive into that a bit. But man, I mean, the Celtics, again, sometimes it's easy to want to root for an underdog or root for different scenarios, but sometimes the stats are what the stats are, the roster was the roster is, and sometimes they're just better than the other team. But before we get into too much of that and too much of how these things correlate to the Pelicans, make sure you guys are following us on X, on Twitter, on IG, on TikTok. That's NO Basketball No E. Make sure you are liking the episode below, and make sure you are locked in and subscribe to the channel as the draft is around the corner. And as soon as this finals is over, all hell is about to break loose in the NBA. But before we jump into what that looks like and what are some of those moves, you and I have been talking the last couple of days and really all season long about how the Celtics are built very similarly to what the Pelicans want to become. Their two best players are predatory wings. One is a downhill freight train that has the ability to shoot on the Celtics side, and the other is a perimeter oriented player who has the ability to get downhill. And they're two-way players on both sides, so they're hell on offense and they're hell on the other end. Then they surround them with two all-NBA caliber defenders on both sides of them, and two bigs that can spread the floor and that can rim protect. That sounds awfully like what the Pelicans should build around with their two predatory wings. But I want to bring that up for discussion. Like, when you look at how their pieces fit together so elegantly, and they've got other guys on the roll, but mostly they play about 7 guys. The fit is just so perfect everywhere because they do multiple things. Everybody on the court can beat you both offensively and defensively. Everybody on the court, for the most part, is available and healthy and able to play the majority of the games year in and year out. Everybody on the court can hit threes comfortably, whether you're sagging off of them or whether they've got to create it on their own. What other similarities you kind of see with this blueprint of how the Celtics were able to put together excellent talent, some cast-off talent, like people were ready to write off Kristaps Porzingis and things like Al Horford and things like that. They trade away Marcus Smart, the heart of the team, and become infinitely better. And so when you look at those things, what are some other similarities you say the Pelicans need to look at that blueprint and attack that this offseason?
Yeah, I think the majority of the things that you listed, are pretty much where the Pelicans can see themselves lining up, in kind of parallel with the Celtics, right? You have 2 wing players. Your offense is dominated by the wing players, and so you kind of build out from there. And we're talking about some of the things that the Pels don't have, that the Celtics also don't have. They don't have that true point guard. They don't really have that floor setter. They're just a bunch of guys who constantly put pressure on you on both sides of the ball. But I think the Pelicans and the Celtics, they do have a lot of similarities, but the function of the Celtics is a lot different than the function of the Pelicans. And therein where there's a difference. And I think even starting at the top from a philosophical standpoint, right? The coaches are so different, and that's why the teams are so different, because Joe Mazzulla is like, I don't give a damn what's going on the floor. Y'all gonna shoot threes. And the Celtics are getting up 39 threes a game. Like they were bricking in game 2. But they take so many that, like, if you shoot 39 and you only make 8 of them, but your opponent only shoots 22 and they make 4 of them, you still win that math game, right? Like, you still give yourself a chance to win that math. And it starts, when you think about there, it trickles down, to Willie Green, who is more of a, we've seen it, right? Like, give the guys the ball, the guys that the ball, and kind of go for it. And like the Celtics have some of that, but it's more about where they attack from. And that's where the real main difference in these two teams lie, is that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are, when you say perimeter, you mean perimeter. They're getting shots up, they're getting threes up, they're attacking, they're 3-level scorers. And, we've seen that is the reason why Brandon Ingram is now the topic of trade talk and the topic of discussion, which we'll get into. That's just not something that he's comfortable doing in long spurts of time in a consistent manner. And Zion, he has started to open up a little bit. We saw it towards the end of the season where he looked like he started to feel a little more comfortable getting at least 8-3 up. But we're talking about Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum putting up 7-8 threes and not even thinking about it. And so that is just something that is fundamentally different between the two teams. Now, you can overcome that, right? There are ways to overcome that. There were ways last season to overcome it. You just didn't want to explore it. We've talked about it earlier, and I tweeted about it. Like, you saw Sam Hauser in game one, like without any real reason to if you're stretching to get him on the floor. There was none of that. He was like part of the rotation. You put him in, he hits 2 threes in the first quarter. That is what you want from a guy like Sam Hauser. Come in, do your job, sit down. And, people were telling me, well, he plays better defense than a guy like Jordan Hawkins or Matt Ryan. And my question is, well, you don't know because they're on the bench. And so those are the type of things that are fundamentally different between the Celtics and the Pelicans, that the Pelicans either have to adapt to or go all in on your philosophy, right? If Zion getting the ball at the top of the key, you see with Derek White and Drew Holiday, you don't need the traditional point guard. You just need guys who are steady, and you want to make sure you're keeping that two-way type of pressure, right? The Mavericks cannot hide Kyrie and Luka on anyone, right? At any point in time, because you can't hide them on Derek White and Drew Holiday. You can't hide them on Porzingis. So you want to keep that two-way pressure. And you have the guys like that. Herb can be like that. Trey Murphy can be like that. Like Dyson Daniels can come in and maybe not be the attack scorer like Derek White is, but he can come in and give you those defensive plays and put you in transition, right? And get pick and rolls going and things like that. So you have guys who can do two-way things. It's just about unlocking them and meeting those philosophical differences. If the Celtics are showing you that you have a similar blueprint there,
right? Couple things out of what you just said. The number one thing being everybody on the Celtics is empowered. Like, they will walk up the court and shoot a 3 without Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum touching the ball and brick it and walk right back down and do it again. Like, every single player, when they're out there, they feel as if I've got the matchup, I have the green light. Whereas, to your point, we talked about it last episode. It felt like if Jordan Hawkins or if Dyson Daniels or somebody shot a shot that Willie Green wasn't comfortable with, they were immediately taken out for somebody he was more comfortable with. And you just can't win that way, in my opinion. You can't put everything around two players, because especially two players that haven't been consistently healthy for any length of time, you've got to empower the other guys and build it into your offense where other guys are enabled and they have the green light from that perspective. I totally agree where Zion and B.I. have to shoot more threes. We've talked about it for years now at this point. I think Zion should shoot 2 or 3 a game because they're wide open. Why not shoot it? You make them at a decent clip, you might as well shoot them. And from B.I.'s perspective, if he's going to stay on this team, and he talked about it at the end of season practice, being comfortable with the uncomfortable, I think he was talking about, I need to change my game. I have to be more perimeter and 3-point oriented if I want to stay on this team. And like he said, make the people of New Orleans believe in us again. I think a lot of it comes on him from that standpoint, is if he's willing to do that or if he wants to be DeMar DeRozan his whole career. But at the same time, the Pelicans don't need to be the Celtics. Zion is one of the greatest scorers inside the paint in the NBA history in the small sample size he plays. The Celtics don't own either one of a player like that on their roster. So at no point am I saying Zion needs to shoot 10 threes a game, but that needs to be a part of his game that he has. Like you said, you saw a little bit of the midi at the end of the season. You saw a little bit of the 3 at the end of the season. That needs to be a more common thing from his standpoint. So both of them need to grow in that particular area. But again, all of this comes down to, what is the philosophy that you are putting things in place? What are you matchup hunting? There's been two particular games this season, or two particular opponents I like to call out: the Clippers and the Celtics. There were multiple games where the Pelicans were very close in both the games. Obviously, they won the season series versus the Clippers. But even in the Celtics, they were winning the majority of the game, and at the end, the Celtics closed them out because the Pelicans couldn't close. But what was really important to me during those two series is those teams are built very similarly, built on two wings and a bunch of players around them to support their wings. In those games, the Pelicans were hunting the Celtics. Like, this is the matchup. I'm going to pull out this matchup. I'm going to pick and roll to this matchup. Outside of those two games, I don't think the Pelicans did it all season long. Like, they just weren't trying to find the matchup over and over and over, even though you had predatory wings. That just wasn't of interest to you. It was throw behind the ball in the middle of the court and see what happens. Throw it behind the ball and see what happens. It wasn't, let me bring out your worst defender and go stop Zion from coming downhill. Like, there wasn't enough of that, in my opinion. And so those are the philosophy things, the changes that have to be adjusted and tweaks if you want to get to this level where the Celtics are getting. The other big issue, and everybody knows, everybody can see it, it's very obvious, and it's the biggest issue on the Pelicans, center. Al Horford, 40% from three, 4 3-pointers a game, average almost a block a game. You're seeing what Kristaps Porzingis can do, shoot from the timeline and rim protect versus Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford.
I mean, Raph, the Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford, like, again, I would still have both of those players on the Pelicans.
Yes, I would.
But those two guys against Minnesota look like the Dudley boys. Like, they were just smash and grab at the rim. They were so effective against Minnesota. And in the first, 3 minutes of game one, Porzingis just blasted all of that away. Like, Dallas had to go get Maxi Kleber from down the block back in Dallas, bad shoulder and all, in game one, because the stretch ability of Kristaps Porzingis of a center like that is just it just completely broke that defensive philosophy. And I think the Celtics getting Kristaps Porzingis, that put them over the top, because as somebody who watches, like I said, I grew up as a Heat fan and watching Dwayne Wade, I still watch the Heat very closely. And I would watch Bam just wreak havoc on Al Horford and Robert Williams. As great as Robert Williams was, just the way he can move his feet and things like that. And then I'm watching Porzingis against the Heat this playoff series, and it just was like, there's nothing. There's nothing you can do with that. And like you said, the center position was such a huge, we had been screaming for it all last season, all coming into this season. Like, has anybody asked anybody about why the rim protection wasn't addressed? And just seeing Porzingis be able to shoot from 30 feet out. I mean, Derek Lively is fighting for his life trying to get to them logo threes. And then also being able to rim protect. I mean, he is the prototypical center right now. And as we move forward into talking about the centers in this game, that is, you want to talk about blueprint? Find that if that falls in your lap, that's about you can't really plan for that kind of blessing to fall in your lap the way Kristaps Porzingis did in the route that he took. And like you said, people were throwing dirt on him and saying it was a wrap when he was in his time in Washington. But he is exactly what you would need for an offense centered around Zion and potentially Brandon Ingram.
Right. A lot of times, players' success is relying upon the situation that they're in. If you're asked to be the end-all, be-all, and that's not really how you're set up to look, you might look one way. But then if you're asked to be the 5th or 6th option on any given night and just be really good at the things you're good at, you can look so much better in the right situation. And so you're absolutely right. And as we look at the Pelicans depth chart, or we look at the Pelicans current roster from a big position, it doesn't look great. Like, Jonas Valanciunas, free agent. Cody Zeller, free agent / retired, maybe. Larry Nance, center-ish, $1 million, $11 million at $11 million a year. Listen, love Larry Nance Jr. I think he's a great person, great for the community. It's not working. It's not it's not the right fit. Like I understand the role and the concept of it, but when we talk about switchability, Larry Nance isn't really there. And then you talk about like the ability to capitalize on the fact that you're small, shot 41% from three, great in his regard, but you don't think of Larry Nance as the floor spacer. Like if the Pelicans have continued to go in the playoffs, you would see more of teams just watching Larry Nance shoot the three and living with the results. Like that's what you would have saw. So you really don't benefit from that way. So you're playing small just to play small. And then again, Carlo Magovich, let's see what he has this summer. Averaged 17 and 8 in the G League. Maybe he could be your third center. Who knows? So you look at that and you say the Pelicans absolutely have to do something. Multiple things. I've said it multiple times. I'm going to say it every podcast until free agency hits. The Pelicans should have 3 new centers walking in to next season. But my question to you is, what is the top priority when it comes to that? Like, is it switchability? Because obviously Willie Green wants the ability to play 1 through 5 and to be able to switch, very similar to how the Celtics do and how they're able to use the fact that they've got 4 defenders at wing/guard, and then their big can space the floor and rim protect. So that seems to be what Willie Green wants to be able to do. Is it rim protection? Like, is that the end-all, be-all? You just need someone who's going to protect the rim, maybe not making $60 million like Gobert, but some player like that. Is it the lob threat? That has not been a part of the Pelicans for a while. Like, Zion led the team in dunks with 78. JV had 54. The top of let's just look at the centers in the West. Gobert, 248 dunks. AD, 196 dunks. Gafford and Lively, 177, 140. Like, this is like the top of I'm not even like naming the best player on the team. Aaron Gordon, 171 dunks. Wemby, 165 dunks. Like, this is what other team centers look like. These are just easy points that the other teams are getting. And the Pelicans leader was Zion with 78. Like, that is a huge drop off of points. You're just in ways to score that the Pelicans just don't have right now on their roster. Or then is it floor spacing? Do you just need someone to guard the 5? Because look what KP does. Look what Cat does, things like that. What would you say is kind of the top priority when you look at those aspects of a particular center?
Another one of my favorite quotes. Only a Sith deals in absolutes. And if you know, you know. I think it's all of them. Like you said, I think this needs to be a committee coming in. This is not one player. Now, if you fall into Kristaps Porzingis, who does all of the 3, I'm not dunk as much, but he could if he wanted to, but he doesn't need to because he's shooting from back there. I think that all 3 need to be there. I think what you saw from Dallas, and we talked about this last pod, you saw Dallas bring in, rim protection and the lob threat in 2 people, right? With 2 players, in Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford, drafting Derek Lively, trading for Daniel Gafford. And you saw how it unlocked, a different offense with Luka Doncic, right? They just threw lobs all over Minnesota. Now, Boston has found a way to kind of deter that a little bit, right? Because again, there's so many, athletic wing guys that, like, when Luka's turning the corner, he's not just getting, straight line shots. He's seeing hands and bodies and things like that, right? And they're playing him one-on-one, but he's not able to get those lobs off. And so, but you saw how it unlocked a different offense. And I think that the Pelicans would benefit in so many different ways from a rim protector. Obviously, the rim, the protection at the rim is paramount, right? Like, you want to be able to, to deter people from taking shots, even if you aren't blocking shots. You want people to be thinking about the presence down there. But one of the things that, like, a great rim protector or a good rim protector does for your team is that it empowers people to be more aggressive on the perimeter, right? We saw this with Rudy Gobert in Minnesota, where they know that Rudy's back there. And so Ant can hound you defensively. He can take more chances in the passing lanes. Same thing with Nickel and Jaden McDaniels. Those guys can be more aggressive. They can push up because they know if you get past them, you got to deal with Rudy back there. Well, I would love now. Herb Jones made first team All NBA, right? And this is with the mentality that like, yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, first team All Defense. I'm sorry,
like,
not Chad Herb, not Chad Herb. First team All Defense. I would love to see Herb with the mentality that if you get past me, there's a guy behind me, because he got first team All Defense with knowing that if you get past Herb, you're probably going to score, right? And so he had all of that weight behind him, with that. Could you imagine Herb and Dyson kind of relaxed, knowing that
Zion,
like I can
and Zion,
right? Like all of those guys. I'm just talking about the defenders, but all of those guys, right? With the mentality that I can play physical, I can take some of these chances because I know behind me there's going to be some help, there's going to be some rim protection. And so I think that benefits the Pelicans in so many different ways. Even with the athleticism that the Pelicans have, if you got a guy that's turning a corner and instead of going up for a shot, he's thinking about it and he's making the late passes. Herb, Trey, Dyson, Zion, like these are BI, like these are athletic guys who can get in the passing lane and make plays and get in transition. That's more offense. And so I think rim protection is so paramount for this team. Just like you remember, like when Zion kind of ticked up the defense and kind of flipped the switch, the team looked totally different with Zion flying all over the place and getting in transition. And so I just think that is super important. And then the floor spacing is just, it is paramount. Like you want to be able to have that extra, that extra layer of offense and insulation in case, you're playing guys who are walling up Zion, right? And walling up Brandon Ingram. You want to be able to say, okay, well, if you're bringing that guy over, and that's what you're seeing with Kristaps Porzingis. He's standing at the 3-point line, and it's like, okay, if you want to help Luka guard Jason Tatum or guard Drew Holiday, like where is that help coming? And so I just think that is paramount. And again, it doesn't have to come from one player. It doesn't have to come from two players. Like if you find a guy that his sole purpose is to block shots. I saw it. Another Brad Stevens is just he has been cooking. He has been cooking. He went and found I can't remember the guy's name. He wore 00, was a tall guy.
Oh, the center from the G League. Yeah.
The G League leader in blocks. And for like 15 games when Porzingis wasn't playing and Horford wasn't he was just in there blocking shots. He wasn't doing anything but rim running and blocking shots. And I'm like, he won them a couple of games just being a deterrent in there. You don't need him to be incredible. And so that's why I'm saying you can find these guys. Like you need multiple bodies coming in. One player doesn't have to do it. You can find guys, plug this guy in. And again, it goes to the philosophical thing where you can't just say, I'm just going to freeze this person out, because that guy can come in and give you something within an 82 game season. And then who knows, you find something cooking with somebody that you never thought would be able to come in and help in that example. So I think that all three of those aspects, the rim protection, the lob threat, and the space in the floor, I think it is very paramount. And I think that you can find at least two of the three in this offseason, and you really probably should and need to do that.
I couldn't agree more, which leads to the next question. How much you willing to invest? Because like if you look at what the West looks like, Jokic, AD, Gobert, Jaren Jackson Jr. wasn't even in the playoffs this year. Wemby's coming, Chet's coming, Sagoon's coming. Like it ain't no bunch of slouches anymore. Like you can't just be throwing Mason Plumlee out there at the starting center and saying good luck. Like you kind of need the guys to be able to deal with that in order to get out of a series. But then you look at the free agent market and you say, well, Nick Claxton's going to cost you $20 million plus if you want to play that game. Isaiah Hartenstein's going to cost you $20 million you play that game. And neither one of them space the floor like that. They're not Kristaps Porzingis who's making $30 million. So it's like, okay, do you really want to jump into that? That goes back to your earlier point. It needs to be a center by committee type thing. Like You mentioned the player from the G League. His name slipped my name. I'm gonna look it up in 2 seconds. But they also had like Luke Cornett, who gets serviceable at the center. Like they just found guys to fit how they want to play around, and we're comfortable throwing them into. Like Carlo came over from overseas, and like you didn't have any centers, and like Larry Nance was hurt, and it was like, all right, well, we're not gonna play him. We're gonna throw JRE out there at the 5 and see what happens.
Right.
Like,
They gave EJ Liddell a 3-year contract, and we still ain't seen him. So
right. And so it's like at some point you have to know what you want to be as a team and get the pieces that fit that and trust the pieces and give them the ability to learn from that. But you got to make the investment. You can't just keep going and say, we'll wait till it fits. But you know that certain things just aren't going to fit. Again, this year was an example of all year long, the starting lineup did not fit. Like it wasn't working. They tried different things, tried Larry Nance. Like it just didn't fit. So you cannot walk into next season and say, we're not going to do anything of this. You can't because JV's walking. But then the other thing is like, you don't want to overcommit because like, look at Minnesota right now. They had a phenomenal season, got to the second round, and now they're looking at that luxury tax bill like, are we close?
We gave Nasrid how much? We traded for Rudy Gobert and gave him what?
Yeah. And so like you don't want to overcorrect and overspend on role players because look, again, this is not a Larry Nance Jr. bash pod, but like the switchable 5 or the small ball 5 that he played could be played by Zion, who you saw at the 5. Could be played by Dyson, who you saw guarding Kristaps Porzingis throughout the year. Could be played by Herb Jones. Could be played by B.I., who was guarding the Cleveland Center that one game. Could be played by Trey, who's 6'10". Like, you can find ways to play that small ball and not give up and play 4 and 5 on the offensive side of the ball. You can find different ways, but it's finding the bigs that aren't going to get killed rebounding. It's finding the bigs that can block a shot every now and then because they have the athleticism to do it. It's finding the bigs that can space the floor. And so when you look at those things, everybody wants that. Every team wants that. Everybody's looking for that. But I think you need to kind of revision of going back to the beginning of this pod. How do you take another piece from a maybe not a great situation, like a PJ Washington, like a Daniel Gafford, coming from bad situations, putting them on teams where they're no longer the second or third best player, they're the 5th or 6th or 7th, and they look a lot better. I'm looking at a player like Isaiah Stewart, who very similar build to like an Al Horford, very similar shooting percentage this year, very similar stats, shot 38% from 3. Not like a super rim protector, but switchable, can play defense, doesn't get bullied because he has the size that Larry Nance doesn't have from a weight standpoint and things like that on an affordable contract, like $15 million for the next 3 years. Could he be like a potential option where you look and say, the Pistons have 1,000 centers for some reason. Jalen Duren is the center of the future. The Pelicans, surprisingly, had one of the better rim protector defensive field goal percentage at the rim because they had hellacious defenders, not because they had shot blocking. So do you really need to go spend $30 million on someone who only blocks shots and only dunks? What are your thoughts on getting creative and trying to get pieces that potentially could look better in your system?
Yeah. I think you put it well. You made some great points there. I think what you want to do is you want to make sure that you are getting you're getting effective players, and allowing those guys to play, right? So if you go like a guy like Isaiah Stewart, like he has a lot of things that you would look for, in a guy who you would want to play center for the Pelicans. He's big, he's physical, and I think he brings a tenacity that you would like. Now he can't be punching people at games and get.
To be honest, I ain't gonna lie to you. The Pelicans need a little bit of that. They need.
Well, yeah, I agree until he's suspended for 2 games and then you lose those 2 games.
Well,
you don't want to have him
suspended, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you don't want to have people missing games for fighting. Like you don't want that to happen. But he could be really serviceable, right? And when you think about the what you're spending with a guy like Larry Nance, right? Like that's $11 million. And you're not getting a lot back from it. And again, I talked about this earlier in the season. I think we have lost we have lost what small ball was intended to do and got lost in the name, right? Like you just don't want to have a small person out there. You want to have a guy who can move his feet. It's not small ball, it's switchable ball, right? It's switchable ball. You want to have a guy that can move his feet and do things like that. I think of another guy like Jalen Smith. Like we talked about, like a guy like Jalen Smith who, is another guy that's he's skinny, but he's tenacious and he's athletic and he can space the floor for a little bit, right? A little bit. Those are the type of guys that you want to be looking for as far as like your depth, right? Like again, there are different ways to attack it and go. But I'm with you. Like you're already gonna be like tapping aprons, with this team as is, right? And so in order to make any of these moves, like people are gonna have to go out and you're gonna have to like replace those guys and with guys who can come in and do things. And I think Larry Nance is one of the prime trade guys that you're gonna have to move off that because his money and what he brings, it just doesn't add up. What you needed from him, he's just not been able to give to you, whether it's been injuries, the fit. He even talked about it in the spaces about so many people wanting to operate in the same area that is hard for him. He had to like pretty much force his way to the 3-point line. Like he could shoot like, in earlier in his career and throughout his career, but he liked to catch lobs and do things like that. Mm-hmm. But now with the Pelicans, he had to go out to the 3-point line because there were so many people who wanted to occupy the same space. And so now, he's giving you that percentage, but like it's not an effective percentage.
It's not one shot. Yeah, it's one again.
One, right. So it's not
4, not 5.
Yeah, it's not 41% on high volume. And so you want to get someone to come in and be that rim protector, that deterrent. But you don't want to go overboard and find yourself, committed to a center position. And now you're looking like, okay, now you have to trade like Herb or trade to get out because nobody wants that big center contract, kind of similar to Rudy Gobert, right? You would love to probably keep Cat, who's probably the better player, but nobody wants that Rudy Gobert, that Rudy Gobert contract. And so now you're like forced to look, okay, I have to get out underneath this bill, this team. I need to find a way to get this team better. I have to take away one of my best players and consider trading that person away. And so you don't want to fall into that trap. I see some, John is in the chat, giving us some things about drafting and developing bigs. Like that is a choice as well that you're going to have to do. And we'll get into some of the choices that we have. But I do think this is an opportunity for the Pelicans to revamp their center position. You have, they may not be your cup of tea, but you have like pretty much a lot of the other things that you would need: the star power, the shooting, the defenders on the wing. You do not have a current answer for center or a answer moving forward for center. You have to address that this offseason, and you want to be smart with the choices that you make in that regard.
Absolutely. Like even on the Celtics, again, there ain't very many KPs out there just laying around that you go trade for. Like you ain't getting Chet, you ain't getting Wimby, like you ain't getting those 7-foot tall players that can shoot from half court. Like that doesn't exist. And so even then, Al Horford and KP are like the 5th and 6th best players on the team. So like, it's not like they made a lot of investment in KP, but again, that's a team that's in the title, in the finals, about to win right now. The Pelicans need to prove they can get out the first round before they start diving into the second April.
Yeah, some of those years that you remember like rookie Tatum dunking on LeBron in the playoffs. Unfortunately, those are the years that BI and Zion should have been getting that experience. And now this is what happens. You see that this works. You get up to the finals. You lose against the Warriors. Okay, proof of concept is there. Now you invest all in. And it sucks when you don't get those opportunities. But that's just the way the NBA business goes. You have to put something out there for people to say, these owners to say, okay, we're going to put the investment in, and the Celtics have shown that. That's how you end up with the Porzingis and Drew. These guys extending, so they're gonna be there as part of the team for a while. That's how you end up with that. We're getting that proof of concept there, and the Pelicans just they have to get that eventually. Like if the time is ran out on Brandon Ingram and Zion, then so be it. But like that has to be, you have to get that proof of concept with Zion as the fulcrum.
Yeah, you got to get to the playoffs with your two best players on the court and say we lost because of blank. You can't get to the playoffs, not have one of those guys or one of those guys not be healthy and say let's trade everything because you still don't know from that standpoint. But you bring up a good point. I see it in the comments as well. One of the best ways to find a big, especially it seems like every year there's a 7-footer coming out who can shoot threes and can dribble the ball like they're a guard, things like that. Obviously, it's not Wemby, but you need to start investing in here. So the first crack at it was Jackson Hayes. Didn't go great, but that doesn't. They're kind of like, I feel like centers are kind of like quarterbacks in the NFL. You got to keep trying until you hit one because, like John is saying in the comments, like if someone has a rim protecting three-point shooting big, they are not giving that player to you. Like that is not coming to you unless you are spending an absorbent amount. And so you have to find that on your own. And so when I look at this draft, it's a draft that there's a lot of flawed players in it. There aren't a lot of guaranteed home runs, but in every draft, and like we talked about before, there are good players and there are people that can fit what you need, and situation makes success.
You don't have to win the draft. You just have to win your draft pick. Your guy just has to be great. None of those other players have to be good.
Exactly. So when I look at that and I look at realistically the Pels at 21 and whether they trade up a little bit, whether they stay and put, I don't think they're going to get into the top 5 unless something happens with Brandon Ingram. I don't see a player that's worth trading into this top 5 for from that standpoint.
You see a lot of people trying to trade out of the paint. Yeah,
like
a lot of people trying to trade out of the draft.
I don't see that from that standpoint. And so when I look at the centers around where the Pelicans are looking at, there is one name that clearly stands out to me. 2 years ago, we were Ben Mathurin till we die in the Dyson Daniels draft. Last year, we were Derek Lively, Jordan Hawkins, or Give Me Death. You got one of them. You addressed the shooter last year. This year, I think you got to go for the athletic 5. And to me, that player is Kel'el Ware. It's crazy. I remember the day you texted me. It was 2023 sometime. I think we were like a month or 2 into the season. And randomly you said, Kel'el Ware, that's the guy. And I'm like, who the hell are you talking about? Because NCAA basketball is trash right now. Why are you watching this right now? Why are you locked in? You're like, that's the guy the Pelicans need to look at. And so I paid close attention. I got some ties to Indiana. I talked to some people, and I just paid close attention. And, man, I just think the fit is there. So you're looking at a guy 6'11", 230 pounds. Remember, Jackson came in at like 200 pounds. Like he was very small. This guy is not small like that. Now, he's not a bruiser by any means, but he's not just going to get thrown around like like Trey earlier in his career and things like that. Averaged 16 points, 10 rebounds last season, 2 blocks, shot 43% from 3. Some of the player comps, you got Miles Turner, you got DeAndre Ayton, and a lot of the knock on him, like those players, that they can be a little bit soft and a little bit inconsistent and a little bit not always the most physical player and things like that. But then I look at what you can do. He's elite rim protector. He was one of the top draft picks coming out, or one of the top picks coming in. He can finish at the rim. He can space the floor, and he's growing that area. He's top 5 in almost every category for centers in the NBA Combine. And I'm like, at 21 or 20 or 18, I don't care about the flaws. Give me that guy. Put him next to the other players on our team, and let's see what you could draw. What are your takes on Kel'el Ware? Because I think he is by far the option in terms of these group of centers that you're looking at in this huge draft.
Yeah. I'm a Kel'el Ware stan. I think if available, I think he would be the best pick for the Pelicans. A lot of the things that, like you just said, that you mentioned about, what's being said about him and his soft and things. A lot of things like that was said about Kristaps Porzingis too. And so I think, again, a guy at 230, that gives me hope that he can put on even more weight, right? Or he can at least bulk up and get some more muscle, right? So it's not that tiny guy that's like, oh, I hope he can put on 20 pounds of weight, like we were trying to do with Jackson. Like we would just, Jackson, go eat all the food because we need 25 pounds of weight. Like this is a guy coming in at 230. Like he has a little bit of that, and so maybe you can flesh that out and get that more, more tone and kind of maybe in like the Giannis build, right? Like Giannis came in thin and all of that, but he's not big anymore. He's not ginormous, but he's muscular, he's strong. And so you get a guy, at that point, the floor spacing. If you go and you watch this guy play, and you watch him, get on the floor, he is comfortable shooting that 3 ball, right? And he's comfortable blocking shots. And I think those two things being like the main thing you would want for a Pelican center, I think that is where you could get some really good value from him. The thing that worries me about him, and to be honest, we can just put it out there, is that I'm not sure like he would get a chance to play, with Willie Green there. I just don't know. I could see Willie Green going sign a veteran and then like he's in the Birmingham running up and down the floor. Like I that is the thing I would be worried about. And I'm dead serious because obviously he could tend to get his motor is questioned sometimes. And I think that's you get into the NBA, and I think there are more times than not people get more motivated to make money. And so, if you coming in with motor problems, I think a fat paycheck, ahead of you, like a stick, like hanging and you're running on a treadmill, I think that could motivate you to do things. And again, at Indiana, he was asked to be 1A, 1B to their score, their best player. You're coming into a situation where, similar to Derek Lively, right? Derek Lively went to Dallas, and all Dallas wanted you to do was set picks, rebound, block shots, and dunk. That was Derek Lively could do that when he was 15 years old. He got that part down pat. You come to the Pelicans, you don't need to be the feature offense. We don't need you to do the all of the heavy lifting that you did at Indiana. They just need you to come in, shoot, space the floor, block shots, and rebound. And I think that those things are things that he can do. Now he can get out and switch a little bit, right? He can move his feet. He's an athletic guy, and he goes for blocks. And I think that is one thing that is missing when you talk about center prospects. Like, are you comfortable going for that block, right? Going through, maybe having to go through a little contact to get to that other side, and he goes for those blocks. And I think the combination of the 3-point shooting and the rim protection, very similar to Kristaps Porzingis with the motor and things, but you see what happens when you're not asked to be, like you said, the guy. You don't have to be so intense and be so locked in. Just be out there and play and do the things that you do best, right? And I think that Kel'el Ware right now, if all else is there, if he's there, I see John talking about trading up to get him because he might be gone. And I've listened to some other teams' pods, and he's on their this is not a Pelican secret. He's on their radars too. And so that might be a situation where, you get to 14, 15, and he's still there. That like, is that something that you're willing, if the Pelicans are so sold on him, are you willing to go up? Now that might be costly, might not be in this draft. But it probably will be, because draft picks are just, until they become players, they're like crazy expensive. And so, if he's there, if he is on the board when the Pelicans are there to pick, to be honest with you, and we could talk about some of these other guys, especially the big guy that everybody, loves and wants to talk about. I think that Kel'el Ware is literally the plug, the same way Jordan Hawkins for me was a plug and play kind of fit for the Pelicans. I think that Kel'el Ware is a plug and play guy for the Pelicans as well.
Yeah, and I'm not even saying start him. Like, I think you should trade for
absolutely
that player.
Yeah, absolutely. This is development big. Yeah,
come off the bench, and even look, I'll do even one for it because I couldn't agree more. A conversation, we've talked about this on this pod, so I'll double down, but I'm not gonna dive into it. A conversation needs to be had with Willie Green in terms of flexibility, both in game situations and how you manage your roster. The NBA is becoming more and more youthful. More and more players are playing their first couple games coming out of college. More and more players are in the rotation as rookies and things like that. There has to be some give and take of CJ can shoot 8 terrible threes in a row and you won't bat an eye. But if Jordan Hawkins takes one shot and misses, he's out. There has to be a little bit more flexibility from that standpoint, because you saw it with Trey. You saw it with Hawk. You saw it with Dyson Daniels. Like, it can't be year after year. You don't even give these guys an opportunity to fail. Like, they just have to score 100 points in the G League for 10 games in a row to sit on the bench. Like, just needs to be more.
Just to follow that point, that's my question is like, okay, so why would Jordan Hawkins play next season? Because he didn't get any experience. So what is the rationale for Willie Green to play him next season? Because if you don't play these guys, they don't get the experience. So then the next year comes and guess what? Still doesn't have the experience, still isn't like fully integrated into the system, isn't fully aware of the defense, how to play defense, how to make up for your slight frame and things like that. Like, he still doesn't have that. And so does he sit next season because he doesn't have that? And that is the issue you come into. And before you know, like, these guys are on 3 and 4 year contracts. Before you know it, it's the 3rd year and you're like, all right, let's get him in there. And now he's incredible. And you're like, wait. Oh, it just, you can't just keep running in circles like that. So I agree with you 1,000%.
Right. So let's talk about the big fella, the Zach Edey from Purdue, 7 foot Naismith player. 7'4", 300 pounds, 25 points. 25 points a game is ridiculous in college. And
yes, it is.
And 12 rebounds. Player comps are like Ivaka Subov and like Jonas. Look, I think Edey was an incredible college player. I just look at today's NBA. I'm looking at the finals. I'm looking at the conference championships. And I see the player who won Defensive Player of the Year, Rudy Gobert, being the reason why the team can't win while he's on the court. And if that guy, who is a multiple Defensive Player of the Year candidate, cannot stay on the court because he can't switch, I'm sorry. But I just don't see the Zach Edey fit. Like, there's no way you can look at the NBA and see the athleticism and see the size and see and say, yeah, sign me up for that. That's going to be my 10-year starter. The back to the basket guy who was just dunking over a bunch of little children like Zion high school videos back in the day. Like, listen, I know he's very talented, and I'm not trying to downplay this player because he had an incredible college career. I just think the fit for the NBA and the fit on this team, if you thought Jonas Valanciunas, whose feet are made of cinder blocks, who could actually shoot and could actually shoot a little bit from 3, was someone that Willie Green wasn't going to play, there's no way in hell you look at Zach Edey and you say that guy's going to be in the rotation. What are your thoughts on the Zach Edey from Purdue?
That has always been my question. So Willie Green is the coach of the Pelicans. Willie Green doesn't play rookies, and he sat JV. So you're going to give him a rookie JV. That's what you're going to do. That the guy who sat JV for entire halves of playoff series where he clearly had an advantage and just would not play him, you're going to give him another guy. And listen, there's a clip going on around of the social media, Twitter and all of that, of Zach Edey like at the top of the key, chopping his feet and things like that. And this came from a conversation with my best friend Keenan, and shout out to him. We were talking about this and we were talking about Zach Edey, and I saw the clip. Right. And Zach Edey was up there switching his feet and doing things and chopping his feet and playing. And then, if that's what you're focused on, you're like, man, that looks great. But if you just look behind Zach Edey, you would see 2 or 3 people with a foot in the lane, right? A foot in the lane, just kind of watching. And so if we see that, the ball handler sees that. If you go look at today's NBA, there is one guy standing in one corner and there's another guy standing in another corner. So it's one thing to guard at the top as a big and switching and moving your feet and guarding when you got a couple of guys behind you because like the shooting guard from like Appalachian Wisconsin State University isn't going to make the league. And so your D1 Purdue guard is like, all right, I'm not worried about him. I'm gonna stand in the middle of the floor a little bit. It's one thing to guard like that. It's another thing to be on an island by yourself and over again, you have to guard and there is nobody behind you because everybody has to stay home on the shooters. Like, it's just a different type of guarding. And so, listen, he was one of the best college players we've ever seen, one of the most decorated players we've ever seen. But so was Tyler Hansborough. That's all I'm saying. And I'm not saying they are the same player. I'm not saying they're going to have the same career. He could come in and completely make this podcast look dumb. I just think that for this Pelicans team, for Willie Green as the coach, I don't know if Zach Edey is the guy that Willie Green is going to feel comfortable saying, okay, the starter is not playing. Let's go ahead and throw this guy in. And to be honest, I think that Zach Edey, with his pedigree and the way I think he is going to be one of those guys that's going to be looking for a shot to start. Obviously a rookie you draft, you go where you want to go. You go where you're drafted. But I think there's going to be a lot of like, okay, that guy needs to be out there and starting and playing heavy minutes. And I just don't see Willie Green giving him that kind of opportunity. And then even if he was, I don't know about the switching and just having Zion and him. Just that's not a lob threat. Like he's a post guy. He's JV, just not like as great from the three at space in the floor. And so I don't know if Zach Edey is the guy. I'm not too interested for his fit with the Pelicans in this draft.
Yeah, me either. Another name floated out there, Kyle Filipkowski from Duke. Hey, he's a Duke guy, so shout out to that. I know Trajan left, but Pelicans still have a bunch of Duke guys. Player comps like Zach Collin, Kelly Olynyk, Saudi Alzama. Look, I would rather just go get that player in free agency than draft a player who has a very limited ceiling. Like, there is no, you're developing to become what? Like, he's not going to be Larry Marketing or anything like that. He's going to be a role player of some kind. There is not a high ceiling there, especially at like 21, 19. It's okay to gamble a little bit. I feel like this is like a safe pick who's like floor is pretty high because he's smart, makes good decisions, can shoot the ball a little bit as a taller guy. But like, he also is going to get killed. And so like, I don't look at that as a realistic option. So the only one that potentially could be another good fit for the Pelicans if Kel'el Ware is not there or if they decide to go away from it is Yves Missy from Baylor. 6'11", 230 pounds, 19 years old, 11 points per game. He was okay on the board, 6 rebounds a game. Player comp is like a Jalen Durant, Clint Capella. Like, he's a rim runner. He's a rim runner, shot blocker, high motor, high energy player. He's that type of guy that you throw lobs to, you get blocks from, and things like that. But again, I think his ceiling from like an offensive standpoint, like I don't think he's ever going to be able to shoot. Like I just don't like I just don't see it in that happening. So he's probably going to be that type of player. What are your thoughts on a player like that if, again, Kel'el Ware's off the board?
Yeah, I think that if you go out in the, again, like I talked about, you can do this in multiple ways. Like you can get multiple people. If you go out and get a rim, like a shooter, a stretch five, I don't know who it is. We haven't gone through that. But if there's like a guy available that you could go out and get somebody who could help space the floor a little bit, and you name him the starter, then I wouldn't mind a guy like Missy coming in and being a project rim runner, kind of rim protector guy, if Kel'el Ware isn't there, or if like that's, you get the shooter, so you want to get the rim protector or the shot blocker, and the rim runner, the lob threat. So I would be okay if you miss out on Kel'el Ware. Filipkowski, I just those non-athletic Duke centers, like Derek Lively is pretty good. He went to Duke, but like he's athletic as hell. Like might be the best athlete on Dallas right now. Those unathletic, I'm talking like the Plumlees. Like the way the NBA is shaping right now. If you're gonna take a swing, get somebody with like you say, a high ceiling that you could go into. Like they could give you something now because they're like athletic and can run and maybe rim protect. But they also have some development. Like I just think that's a guy that like exactly what he's gonna be. Like you can see his player type. Like you can see it. And I think that he could be a serviceable role player. But if you're gonna take a swing right at the pick that you're at, I would go with the Missy versus Filipkowski.
Right. And so again, those are kind of the centers that the Pelicans will be looking at in just a couple weeks. Crazy. The draft is right around the corner. Again, everything is about to heat up in the NBA once this finals is over. The pig is a big issue, right? Pun intended, it is a big issue for the Pelicans. It has to be their main focus. They have to overhaul the position. Or again, even if you keep Zion and BI, I think that that's going to be the thing that ultimately is the L. And then you'll get to that point in the series or in the season where you go through the playoffs and you figure out what's the big issue. It's the thing that everybody's been saying for 3-4 years. It's how do you revamp the center position? But with that being said, that's all we have for you today. Again, we'll be coming to you guys talking about some of the other positions that the Pelicans have. Should there be moves? How do you replace Najee Marshall? Can Dyson Daniels take the next step offensively? What you got left for the people?
As always, you never know what people are going through, so give someone a smile today. Yeah, we're going to be coming at you with all of this. Is just the center part. We're going to be talking about the wings. We're going to be talking about the guards, the bench, right? We're going to be talking about all of that. And so lock in with us. Follow us at NO Basketball No E on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you get your social medias. Follow myself at Garrick _Rattler. Follow my brother at Raphael _Rattler. And like that.